During the early fall of 1889 in the mountains of Northern California, a ranch hand by the name of Jim West was playing cards and having a few drinks with a group of drifters he'd met in town that morning. Jim was pretty versed in poker. However, he wasn't very good at knowing when to call it quits. Jim was up by a lot, and the drifters were eyeing him warily. No one knows for sure if Jim was actually cheating, but that doesn't really matter for our story. The fact is, the drifters thought he was and called him on it. Jim cursed the drifters and overturned his chair as he jumped to his feet, grabbing for his six-shooter, yelling at them to get out. Maybe it was the whiskey talking, maybe it was his short temper, but Jim took his winnings and forced the drifters to the door of the small wooden shack he slept in while tending the cattle. The drifters were unarmed and didn't take too kindly to the fact that they felt swindled and had been forced out of the game at gunpoint. They marched out to the nearby woods and exacted a plan of revenge. That evening, while Jim slept, the drifters he had so callously evicted from the poker game crept up to his tiny cabin and quietly barricaded the door and proceeded to light the wooden frame on fire. Jim, having drunk himself to a stupor, awoke in terror. Disoriented and in a panic, he tried desperately for the door, but it was no use. The door would not budge. The drifters watched from the edge of the woods as Jim screamed in pain and horror. A young man by the name of Trevor Walsh was tending his father's sheep at the edge of the woods when he stumbled upon the charred remains of a small, old cabin. Curious, he sifted through the timbers and discovered what appeared to be an old whiskey bottle and the fragments of some old playing cards. Intent on returning the sheep to the corral and asking his father about the old cabin, he set off in the direction of his family's home, just about a mile down the gently sloping hills. As he was rounding up the sheep, he called for the family dog, but there was no response.
Damn dog,
He muttered.
where'd you get off to this time?
Occasionally, the dog would wander off into the forest at the edge of the hills, either to retrieve stray sheep or just to sniff around. So Trevor headed in the direction he usually found the errant dog.
Danger!
He shouted the dog's name.
Danger! Here, boy! It's time to go home! Let's go!
He whistled loudly as he scanned the edge of the tree line for the mutt.
Come on, boy! We don't have time to mess around in the woods. It's getting dark.
There was no response.
Damn it.
He muttered to himself as he pushed forward into the trees. The sheep baaed softly in the distance as Trevor disappeared into the darkness under the cover of trees. A few yards into the forest, Trevor heard something rustle in the distance and assumed it was Danger, the family dog. However, as he approached, he realized it was one of the sheep. It was a young ewe, lying on the ground with its leg twisted up in an old bit of barbed wire fence. The sheep had already exhausted itself and was in bad shape. Barbed wire wrapped tightly around one leg to the point it was probably beyond saving. "What have you done, you crazy little woolly—" Trevor stopped abruptly as he heard a barking in the distance and the sound of the other sheep back in the field, stirring with excitement.
Danger? Danger? Where the hell did you get off to? You're supposed to be keeping these damn sheep out of the woods.
He yelled as he stood and walked toward the edge of the trees. Danger, the family dog, started barking more intensely, and the sheep scattered off into the distance of the outlying hills. Trevor hurried toward the sound of the barking dog just in time to see Danger growling viciously at something that was just beyond his vision in the tall outlying grass. Danger darted into the grass with a snarl, and then there was a loud yelp, and then nothing.
Danger?
Trevor shouted as he raced out of the trees and into the meadow to get a better look. Trevor always carried a rifle, just in case he ran into wolves, or the occasional cattle thief, so he stopped and removed the gun from his shoulder as he cautiously approached the tall grass Danger had just vanished into.
Danger?
He nearly whispered as he struggled to see into the grass. It was getting too dark to see more than a few yards, so Trevor paused and scanned the horizon.
Danger? Where'd you go, boy? What is it? What's out there?
Trevor could barely make out a couple stray sheep standing in the tall vegetation just a few yards away from where he last saw Danger. It was then he heard a strange, unfamiliar sound, preceding a loud thump. It was immediately followed by another loud thump, and then another. Suddenly, one of the sheep dropped to the ground with a sickening crunch. Trevor stooped forward, straining to see what was happening, stood upright and began fumbling for his ammunition when he heard the strange thumping sound again. It grew louder and closer, and then a second sheep that was skittishly trying to get back to the herd suddenly dropped into the field of grass just like the first. Now, Trevor could make out a figure in the darkness just ahead. It slowly turned and made a horrible and frightening hiss as it caught Trevor's eyes. He couldn't tell what he was looking at, but it startled him something fierce. He reeled backward as he tried to ready his rifle to take aim at the beast. The thing looked at him with piercing, glowing red eyes, and suddenly lunged forward with tremendous speed.
Oh, God!
Trevor shrieked as he fell over himself trying to turn and run. The creature was unimaginably quick and ran with a shuddering, thumping sound like that of a heavy, galloping steed. Trevor turned and quickly fired off around into the darkness before turning back around to run up the hill in the direction of the burnt-out cabin he'd stumbled upon earlier. The creature gained on him so fast, Trevor knew he didn't stand a chance of outrunning it. So he turned, cocked the rifle, and fired off another round. But there was nothing there. Frantically scanning the horizon, Trevor knew the beast could not have gone far. Yet he saw nothing. He slowly turned around, facing the old charred cabin. It was there, in the moonlight, that he finally saw his assailant. It was a man, or at least half a man. There, in the faint moonlight, wearing tattered, burnt rags that resembled an old shirt, was half a man, burned and scorched, standing on his fists. Its arms were massive, hairy, and bulging. Its face was scarred and twisted. There were no legs, just the ripped remnants of the shirt hanging down, dragging on the ground. The creature hissed again. This time it almost sounded like gurgling speech. Blood dripped from its face, its eyes glowing red in the moonlight. It then lunged forward toward Trevor, pounding its fists into the ground like legs as it clambered toward him swiftly. Trevor fired again right at the beast, point blank as it lunged at him. Trevor shrieked in fear as the beast came down on him. The two tumbled into the field, and Trevor rolled, losing his grip on the rifle in the scuffle. He quickly jumped to his feet and turned, yet the beast was nowhere to be seen. His heart pounding with fear, Trevor raced down the hill as fast as he could. He knew he must have hit the thing with his last shot, but not wasting any time to find out, he ran in fear toward his family's home. Trevor ran as fast and as far as he could until he nearly collapsed with exhaustion. He was sweating, trembling, and barely able to catch his breath. He finally slowed to a walk, then paused to recuperate. Bending forward, his hands on his knees, trying desperately to breathe, he turned around finally to see if the beast was still after him. His eyes darting back and forth, his ears desperately listening for any sign. It was silent. There was nothing. Turning with a sigh of relief, Trevor took a step toward home, when suddenly...
Happy Halloween!
Now, I know I said in an earlier video I wasn't going to do anything special for Halloween, but I just couldn't help it. So, happy Halloween. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. Share it with your friends. I worked really hard to get this done in time for Halloween. And there's lots more scary, somewhat true stories coming soon.